Alrighty guys, we got a great problem here reviewing the different stages of inventory production. So remember with the job order, each unit produced is unique. Think about again the boats, the cars, each unit has a VIN number. So we want to go and review the practice of number one, calculating, well, what are our raw materials that were actually used? That's important because then that's going to become part of our current manufacturing costs. Then we want to be able to calculate our actual cost of goods manufactured and then end up with our cost of goods sold. Alrighty, so let's jump in. Let's start it. Here we go. So a lot of given information. Get your bearings. So we've got our raw materials, our beginning amount, what we've purchased, and what we haven't used. Okay, so that's going to be part of the calculation in calculating our raw materials that were actually used. That will then become part of our current manufacturing costs, which will eventually become part of our cost of goods manufactured. So again, step number one, let's figure out, okay, what was our raw materials that were actually used? So we're going to take our beginning raw materials. So our beginning raw materials there, we had 1,200 pounds at a price of $5 per pound. So our beginning raw materials, as you could see, is 6,000. Okay, then we're going to add our raw materials that were actually purchased during the period. So we have the 4,000 times the 6, 24,000. It doesn't show a subtotal here, which is fine. But this is our raw materials available for use would be the 24 plus the 6 or $30,000. Then either we used it or we didn't. Since they've given us ending raw materials here of 1,050 pounds at $6 a pound, we know that we didn't use 6,300. So that means we must have used 23,700. Alrighty, so the 24 plus the 6, 30 minus the 6,300, there's our raw materials used. Now that we have our raw materials used, now we're ready to figure out what our current manufacturing costs are. So our current manufacturing costs, the first thing we need is, what were those materials used from the prior step? So that's that 23,700. Okay, now we got to figure out our direct labor. So how are we going to find our direct labor? Find me the number of hours and our wage rate per hour. So the labor hours, the actual hours were 11,000 hours. Okay, our wage rate, we paid $8 an hour. So obviously our total direct labor, that's 88,000. Now we have to figure out our overhead, but we want our overhead applied. So the first thing we have to do is get an overhead rate. Traditional, we're going to have a single overhead rate. What's our budgeted manufacturing overhead? $90,000. Then they tell us our cost driver is our labor hours. So the first thing we want is our budgeted, not our actual, but the labor hours that were budgeted, 12,500. So take the $90,000 of budgeted overhead divided by that single cost driver, the budgeted hours, 12,500. We've got $7.20 per hour. We then multiply that by the actual hours, and the actual hours were 11,000 hours. So our manufacturing overhead applied is 79,200. So our current manufacturing cost then would be the sum of your direct materials used, your direct labor, plus your overhead applied, or $190,900. Now look, if you had no beginning or ending work in process, then your current manufacturing costs would be your cost of goods manufactured. But obviously in this case, we do have beginning and ending work in process. So we're going to take our beginning work in process, given information, 42,000, add our current manufacturing cost of $190,900. Now, either that total is an ending work in process or we finished it. So what's an ending work in process, we deduct the 38,000, and then what does that equal? Well, therein lies our cost of goods manufactured. Once you have your cost of goods manufactured, which in this case is $194,900, now we're ready to figure out our cost of goods sold. And don't forget, if you have no beginning or ending finished goods, then your cost of goods manufactured would be your cost of goods sold. But in this case, we do have beginning finished goods. So our beginning finished goods, given information, 59,500. We add our current manufacturing cost of 194,900. Again, I like to get a subtotal, cost of all goods available for sale, and then either we sold it or we didn't. But if you don't need to, then just take your beginning finished goods plus your cost of goods manufactured, go ahead and subtract your ending finished goods, 53,000, and therein lies your cost of goods sold. The subtotals, though, are sometimes helpful in backing into missing pieces of the puzzle like we saw in the regular textbook. Alrighty, but nonetheless, therein lies your cost of goods sold. Now, obviously, that's not the end game. Why do we need our cost of goods sold? Well, obviously, we need our cost of goods sold so that we can then go to our income statement and we can calculate our gross profit. So your sales minus your cost of goods sold, you could either get a subtotal, gross profit, or just keep deducting as we've done here, your SG&A, etc., get your operating income, so on and so forth. Okay, the last step is, well, what do we do with the stuff we haven't sold? Well, obviously, the ending inventory, that's going to go on our balance sheet. Alrighty, so not a big deal. Really good summary problem here, and obviously you can see how this lends itself well to a nice long problem with subtotals, etc. Just remember, exam day, they don't want you to carry an error over and then get multiple parts of that particular question incorrect. So each question would be more or less standalone so that you don't carry an error over into the next part. Okay, this way obviously then you get all the different parts incorrect. But really good summary problem. Hopefully that helped review that. Now the next thing we'll do together, guys, is we'll review, well, what if you have mass production of homogeneous units? Then obviously what we've looked at here is not going to be a very efficient way to do it. So then we'll look at the process costing, and we'll review FIFO, and we'll also take a look at weighted average. Alrighty, good job. Let's move on.